pulse of the background screening industry. Brought to you by iCubed Advisors.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to iCubed Advisors 2025 predictions. I'm joined by Jason Morris, Bianca Lager, and a new face, Andy Hellman. Welcome, everybody. Excited to talk about what we think is going to happen in the next 12 months in the background screening space.
Today's going to be fun. There's a lot to talk about.
There is. We're going to do some M&A predictions, what we see on the operations side, compliance, regulatory. There's a new sheriff in town. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. What do we think will happen? How will that impact our space? Andy's going to give his perspective on a number of things, specifically international things he thinks are exciting. Bianca's going to talk about sales and marketing trends. Jason and I are going to do our thing. Let's dive right into it, guys. Let's start with Bianca. Bianca, what's the one thing you're most excited about to kind of watch and see over the next 12 months?
Well, I mean, I think now that, the First Advantage deal settled in with Sterling, those things are going to start changing, and we're going to talk about that. We can start diving right into it since I brought it up, but there's going to be some adjustments, obviously, within that company internally and externally with the customers settling into their new contracts or just kind of making the adjustments there. And some of those adjustments can definitely create opportunity for downstream now for other CRAs that can pick up some of that churn that naturally you plan for this with a merger and acquisition. Roughly, you target the percentage of customers that are going to take this opportunity to go elsewhere. And so if they are taking the opportunity to go elsewhere, you take that opportunity to swoop them up. So that's one of the things I'm on the lookout for.
Let's try and put a number to that. I did a consult for a private equity firm earlier in the week, and I got this question on what do we think the number is. I'll share my thoughts in a second, but Jason, what do you kind of see?
The attrition number on clients or employees?
Yes.
I think it's going to be less than 10%, but that's a massive number. Mm-hmm. That's anywhere between 10 and 20,000 clients that could be looking for work, looking for another background screening company. We've already started to see the attrition on the employee side. They've done quite a few RIFs already, and they're already starting to synergize the staffing there. So that's going to cause and create some uncertainty with clients, which could cause some attrition with clients.
And Andy, what do you think on the international side? How does this kind of play out across the globe?
Well, I think you're going to see some of the same stuff you see happen in the U.S. I've already talked to some friends, colleagues, some of the non-U.S. locations that are looking for work proactively, people that are out of work retroactively or not by their own choice. So I think it's going to be interesting. Same thing in the U.S. I think seeing a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say go down market, but some really good talent from some of these top companies, whether they're being forced out or just are ready for a new home, that are going to some of the small and mid-tier players right now. And some of that talent's got international experience. I think it's going to make these companies in the small to mid-tier sector really level up their game and be much more competitive.
Jason, you mentioned 10%. One of the things I noticed and those synergies, right, that are starting to pay off right away. I was looking at First Advantage's last quarterly report, and they were like, hey, day one, $10 million. We don't need two tax companies. We don't need two accounting firms. We're not running two public companies. We don't, and they just boom, 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 like day one. And then it was, I think, over the next, maybe 6 months, 6 to 12 months, this portion, and then over the final third, they kind of broke it up into thirds there. My number was pretty similar to yours, Jason, about 10%. And to your point, guys, like that's $150 million. So if we think that there is $150 million in play, that is bigger than 98% of the background check companies in the space. So all you got to do is get a little bit of it if you're a competitor. And it's an exciting time. We always liked when there was M&A activity, right? There will be companies that kind of shake loose. So yeah, if I'm a competitor in the space, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, HireRight's already seeing it. I mean, they've completely revamped their entire C-suite. Mm-hmm. They brought in a whole new sales team, so they see that blood in the water, and they're going to go after it for sure.
So a prediction that I have is we will see another coupling up. If we take, the top 6 8 companies in the space, and I have no inside info into this, but I think that in 2025 we're going to see 2 other companies join forces. What do you guys think? Is that fact or fiction from where you sit?
Fact, and probably at a minimum.
Yeah, fact for sure. You're already starting to see it. I mean, DISA's been so active. They just closed a deal with American Data Bank, which I didn't realize had such a hefty healthcare client base with some
Yes.
healthcare specific products. But I think you're going to continue to see things from them. I still say that that Accurate Background is just a darling. They are somebody that can make HireRight, put them over $1 billion. They could put Decisive nearly to $1 billion. I mean, so there's gonna be a lot of inquiries there. The longer they stay independent, the more I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. The
The,
the more valuable that company
sure, absolutely.
becomes,
Yeah. I think
because they keep
darling is a great
growing.
word.
Yeah, they're going to keep growing and growing, and I don't see them selling right away, but there'll be a lot of activity there, for sure. And then the mid market, you'll continue to see some consolidation. So yeah, M&A is going to tick up for
Well,
sure.
let's combine, 1A and 1B, the items everybody wants to hear about, M&A activity, especially at the top. And then the second, new president as of January 20th, unilateral control of the executive and the legislative branch. What's it mean, guys?
What does it not mean is that
I,
Yeah,
I've
because
got
I
some
want,
thoughts.
yeah, like we want Andy's perspective on the international, in regulatory. Your guys'
well,
thoughts, and then I have some, then I have some kind of glass half empty
Jason, your
thoughts.
blog is going viral, so you want to start there with the Trump and the CF. You know what I'm talking about.
CFPB. There's gonna be a lot. There's gonna be a lot that's gonna happen because of Trump. I think there's gonna be a few things that are going to affect the industry directly. Some positive, some negative. I think there's certainty now, so companies are going to have more certainty and make some hiring decisions and start to build their businesses again, invest in their businesses again, which means job growth. So that could happen. You will definitely see a tick up in I-9 services. It's still it's state to state right now. I think that you'll see some federal legislation requiring I-9 services, and who better to provide that than background screening companies. So I think you'll see a tick up there, and that's probably the immediate impact. Then he wants to shut down the CFPB, so that could have some impact on how the FCRA is regulated.
Speaking of I-9s, we're going to be diving into that specifically with how to start getting your act together and lean in towards automation and how the benefits of getting a really nice flowing I-9 program together. Take advantage of that opportunity right now. And like Jason said, there's a trend that we're looking at there. And so at the end of this month, we're going to be doing a webinar.
Yeah, that's going to be a cool product spotlight with Greifman
Yeah.
HR and
Yeah.
that team over there. Andy, does this touch your world at all?
Yeah, I mean, talking the U.S. some too, but internationally, I think one of the big questions I'm curious to see is data protection framework. That's what legalizes the data flows between the EU and the U.S. and other locations. Um, it relies a lot on government oversight, and what we're certainly seeing right now is a push away from government oversight on things. And so there's some talk, a little bit of rumors or whatever, whispers starting in the privacy community about whether some of the stuff going on in government right now might eventually lead to the data privacy framework being invalidated, which could cause a lot of potential challenges. It could cause challenges in our industry with data transfer from US, EU, doing background checks, but also some of the large players, the Facebooks and Googles and of the world and stuff like that. The data transfer that's required, is there going to be a challenge with that, and what might that do to the economy and so on? So I think it's still too early to tell or make a real strong prediction, but definitely at least a little bit of cause for concern right now amongst privacy professionals.
So we tend to think, and again, another question I kind of got from this consult I did earlier in the week, what's growth look like in this space, right? And is it higher under this administration? Is it lower under this administration? And my sentiment is, screeners, I think by definition, we're risk averse. It's the nature of the business that we're in, right? I think owners and leaders tend to view the future with a little glass half empty rather than glass half full. And I think it is part of the DNA of those of us in the space. 2025, is it a year of growth, guys? Is it a year of contraction? What do you think?
Growth, 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 my friends. I think that yes, like there is an overall sense. I think you're right, and of course, change of administration, where are things going? To me, the overall sentiment is that this is though there are going to be changes, there is also going to be a lot of opportunity to really modernize and really move this industry and really move the products that we're putting out into the forefront of talent acquisition, and just making sure that this is part of a strong workflow versus, the kind of old school messaging of like this being a barrier to hiring. I mean, this is really about, there's so many candidates out there right now. The job market is very, very full. And so I think that that's nothing but good things for background screening in general, at least when you kind of are able to adjust your messaging and get really good content out there and get really good messaging out there about how you really work with what's going on in the trends and how you present yourself. I think it's really all about how each company is positioning themselves. And what we know for sure is that these top companies, they're getting that messaging right. They're absolutely nailing it. And so if you're feeling the heat of like feeling like they're sucking, the life's blood out of your sales growth, pay attention to some of that messaging stuff and the way that they're positioning themselves.
I think the one thing that I'm concerned about, I think we're definitely going to see growth. It's just how much growth. I think in the past, we've looked at our clients that were, number one, replacing employees, and number two, net new employees. And, AI is having a big impact on a lot of industries. So, if let's say your CRA is super concentrated in one industry that can have a huge impact with AI, you might not see as much growth there. So I think the companies that have a well-diversified client base and well-diversified industries will probably see a little more growth than companies that will be more impacted through artificial intelligence.
Andy, how's this touch the and Jason? I like how you talked about kind of the macro and the micro there, things that affect the entire industry, and then things that might affect your business. Those are not always two and the same.
Right.
Andy, we've been really bullish, and I know this is your world, absolutely, on international opportunities over the next couple years. Do you think that tracks the domestic market, or do you think there's kind of some separation where there's more room there than there might be here in the States?
Um, yeah, I think kind of like Jason said, there's going to be some winners and losers in it. Um, kind of the idea that if the U.S. sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold.
I've heard that before.
Um,
That's funny.
yeah, from an economic standpoint, I think we'll see a lot of growth in the U.S. In the year. I agree with that, but at the same time, I think there's going to be some industries that might get impacted. And if we look at things like the tariffs that may or may not come to be with Canada or Mexico, if any of that stuff happens, then it may have an impact on their economies much more than it does anything to the U.S. economy. So I think there's some potential downside risks for companies that are focusing offshore. That being said, I think that some of these trends are still going to continue. Globalization, global workforces, companies are not just going to retreat to U.S. borders all of a sudden and make everything in the U.S. I think the opportunities are still going to be there. When it's going to be across all industries, that remains to be seen.
A key word Andy threw out there: tariffs. Jason, Bianca, any thoughts as you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion out there about the impact that's going to have. I talked to some private equity, rather large private equity firms over the last couple of months, and there was a lot of uncertainty there with the tariffs as far as how they're going to make investments, because they weren't sure how the tariffs are going to affect other investments they have, plus new investments they want to make. Um, I think a lot of the tariff talk is nothing more than a negotiating tactic. It's page one out of Trump's How to Make a Deal book. So I think a lot of it's threats. But to be honest with you, a lot of it is also probably warranted. I mean, look, when we started in the business in early 2005, 2006, as our call centers started expanding, and our competitors started outsourcing stuff to India, like maybe tariffs would have helped level the playing field for smaller companies like us at the time. So, I don't know what the negative or positive effects going to be, but there's going to be some sort of effects on the industry.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Bianca?
that's the truth. I mean, we have no idea. I mean, in terms of how this is tangibly actually going to change actual policy, when actual, implementations are going to occur. And I tend to agree with the point that this is the great negotiation game that we've seen in the first round of this administration, that we come out, swinging and make big headlines and make big conversations happen that ultimately, at the end of the day, the impact is less terrifying than worst case scenario.
So far, but who the hell knows?
Who the
Who
hell knows?
See what she did there, everybody? Terrifying. That's a great video clip. Yeah.
I didn't even get that pun. That's great.
The best ones.
Jason, you said two things that were diametrically opposed to each other, and yet are both true. You said, "I think it's much ado about nothing," and I think there is uncertainty, and the business community does not like uncertainty.
Nope.
Investment does not happen with uncertainty. So yeah, I can see it touching us. My view of the next 12 months, and I think this leads into another thing I'd like you guys' predictions on. I think half of the industry is going to see flat or declining revenues in 2025. Why? Political uncertainty, sure. Tariffs, yes. But I just think that we are really racing toward a consolidation of revenue with the top 8 to 10 companies in our space. That revenue comes from somewhere. When large companies in the space are promising their investors 10% growth every year, that is, depending on the company, between $50 and $150 million. That is not coming just from upsells. That is not coming just from cross-sells. That is coming from sales and marketing muscle, trade show presence, sales force, reaching into the bowels of your businesses and taking your largest clients away from you. That doesn't have anything to do with tariffs. That doesn't have anything to do with Trump. That just has to do with brute force hand-to-hand combat in a capitalistic space. So I am glass half empty on the several hundred businesses in our space that are below $50 million, $20 million. What do you guys think as you hear that?
I have big thoughts.
On point?
I have big thoughts.
Off base? Let's go.
Jason, I'll let you go first. So I got big thoughts, though.
I agree that you will see that half the CRAs will see declining revenue, and I agree with that because some of them have not invested in their companies, and they're not going to be able to compete technologically.
Yep.
Again, whether it's with AI or even just services like Identity and I-9 that they're not going to have available, that's going to hurt. So the companies that have never invested in their own companies or taken investment into their companies, those are going to be number one. Number two are the companies that just have been on cruise control. Again, the tail wags the dog sometimes with technology, and you're starting to see some really cool things come out of the big shop. So, they'll continue it'll continue for them to be harder and harder to compete.
Absolutely. And I mean, two ways that I think about it, and my first inclination is growth. And you're right, Kevin, I'm probably thinking about that top 50%. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And I think when you hear Jason's words, and let's say you're in that bottom, 50% ish, or you're maybe in a phase where you're questionable and you're like, I'm not sure if it applies to me. I think about it like this, like, don't be overwhelmed by the, oh my gosh, I have to make a massive investment in technology, or like I have to change everything. you really need to start thinking about how you can represent your company in a more modern way, in a way that looks better. And I mean, I'm talking really simple, guys. You got to start with like your website and some of your messaging. Some of these folks out here and some of these CRAs, like you have a generously 2005 website, okay? And you have to appreciate that, like, the AI of it all doesn't just affect operations and profit margins and this and that. It affects the way B2B buyers do their research and the way decision makers make decisions about who they're going to partner with and who they're going to have business with, right? And B2B decision makers want to be empowered. They want to feel like they're making the right, they want to feel like they've done their own research, that they know, and they have so much information at their fingertips, right? It is all there for them. And so your job is to empower them that they have made the right choice in your company. And that choice is never going to be made if you got a 2005 website, if you don't have a scalable sales system. And not to say that it's a massive team, but a system that you can put into place that you can represent your company well. Now, there's other technology advances that you need to make operationally, internally. There's other things that really help you. There's platforms you can partner with there. But I think that if you are worried or scared, you have to take the first steps in checking out, in my recent webinar and in my course, actually, I go over 3 of my favorite websites in this industry and why I think they're great and what, is so great. And that's really simple. It's really simple. It's not that expensive to do. And so I am like on the soapbox lately because I think that like it starts really with how you are showing up in the world. And you're just not going to get anywhere if you're still kind of lazy about how you're showing up in a world where we're in 2025, folks. Like, these B2B decision makers, they're sophisticated, and you got to meet them where they are.
Well, you brought up a good point, and Bianca, something we'll give some free advice on this podcast, and it's something that Bianca and I have been texting about an article to write.
Yeah,
and that's that the buyer persona is changing.
Yeah,
in this industry.
Totally.
The buyer from 10 years ago, was 50-year-old female who's getting ready to retire in the next 2 years, is being replaced by a younger, more sophisticated, technologically sophisticated workforce that doesn't have, they don't want these bells and whistles, they expect them.
Yes.
Because that's what they're using in their daily life. They've adopted other technologies they want to see carried over. If you can't compete with that, you're going to have problems.
I used to say, the shift, I felt like the shift started to happen around 2005, 2010. I think specifically the iPod and the iPhone. And when we think of people who would, you're trying to buy printer paper online in 2007 from CompUSA. And that process sucked. Not because it was CompUSA or whatever, but it was 2007 and it was e-commerce. And then So people accepted friction and just bumpiness in their professional lives. But when the iPod and the iPhone and it just became so much smoother and so much easier, and now we're not mailing red envelopes back and forth for Netflix, and we can just press a button, like the immediacy and the solution and the friction that is gone. People are no longer willing to accept that friction in their professional lives when they have such ease of use in their personal lives. So I'm a big believer that personal has affected the professional buying experience. Andy, there's something you mentioned in kind of our notes that we kicked around, and I've been excited to talk about it for a week. Immigration and international screening. Can you connect the dots and what do you see over the next 12 months for us?
Yeah, that's one I'm really curious to see what happens. And is it this, all the talk and bluster like around tariffs, what actually comes to be? We'll see what happens with immigration. Um, I'm not so much concerned that illegal immigrants working under the table somehow we're going to draw away from the volume and background checks because I don't think they were ever getting background checked to begin with. But there was some conversation around the H-1B visa program, around skilled tech labor coming into the U.S. And from an international perspective, you look at a lot of companies in the U.S., screening companies are making their business because somebody in the U.S. at some point in time lived, worked, studied outside the U.S. A lot of cases, these are immigrants, somebody here on a visa or temporary status. Is that going to get impacted? Are we going to see a reduction in people coming to the U.S. to study now and sticking around for jobs that might drive international background checks? Again, I think a little bit early to see what's really going to come out of it, but I definitely think there's a possibility that we'll see a reduction in that revenue.
When you think of international, do you tend to think, when we think of growth opportunities, is it an expansion and just more of an embrace of domestic companies, or at least U.S. based, doing more on those, or is it, hey, we're really seeing Bulgarian employees start to, or a Bulgarian company start to screen their Bulgarian employees? Where's growth, and kind of where do you see the greatest opportunities?
Yeah, I think to get that offshore client, you really need to be in the top, I don't know, 10, 15%, maybe 20% of the market. The $1 or $2 million a year screening company in the Midwest that's still founder led is not going to pick up a client in Europe that's only doing European work. There's no reason why they would. Why would you hire that company? I think that most companies in the US, the ones that I've worked with, outside the top 10, 15, 20 companies, it's because somebody's lived, worked, studied outside the US at one point, but they're here. So it's a US background check with some aspect that's non-US in it. And there's a lot of business to be had there. There's a lot of extra revenue to be had there. If you look at cost of an average background check package, if it's US only, maybe you're spending $20, $30 or something like that, less if it's really basic. A single individual check on the international scale can cost that much, let alone the whole package. So I think there's a lot of revenue to be had screening that non-US background of somebody working in the US. And that's where a lot of the smaller companies are going to see their revenue from. Those top 10, 15, 20 companies that have a little more platform capability, that have the ability to support an offshore client, they'll see revenue coming from outside the US, meaning that the customer themselves are actually located outside the US. I think some companies grow into it. I know when I was at Choice Point years and years ago, we grew in international because we had a client that needed us to help them out. And we said, of course, yes, we'll do it. And we figured it out and grew international business from there. So I think some clients will do that for a smaller company. I know some other companies in my past kind of grew off of specific clients that then took their international business along with it and said, okay, let's do our non-US screening as well. But I think that's more the rarity. I think companies luck into that. They can't always really drive it on their own.
I love that phrase though. You said grow into it, right? And that $2 million company, you're right. In our competitive analysis essentially has shown, if we think of the largest companies in the space, those that have to publicly disclose or have in the past, 15 to 18% of their revenue is international. And we talk about the capabilities, the technology of the client base. That inverts as it gets down, right? Smallest companies in our space, 5% or less. The middle, 10%, et cetera. But like you said, if you're a few $1 million CRA and you grow into it, I mean, I'm not going to do the math here, but that's $50,000. That's $50,000 of new revenue. Margins are great internationally. There's a lot of gold in those hills there.
Yep.
Okay, what else? Jason, Bianca, I know there's a lot that you wanted to tackle today.
I think we were going to bring it home with Equifax and talk about some of the latest happenings there. We know that they're going to keep expanding into retail, from what we've heard. I also heard something this week. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this tactic they're using, but when they started really raising prices on the Work Number, they said the playing field, or at least I was told the playing field would be the same, whether you're hired right all the way down to the smallest CRAs. The fee is the fee. It's my understanding, no matter what the volume is. It's my understanding now that they are offering significant discounts to CRAs that push a lot of their other work over to Equifax, like the crim work. So,
Or go top of the waterfall with their verifications.
which they're already doing. I mean, yeah, they've been offering that, but they're offering significant discounts on verifications for bundling the crim work and the national crim work with them, which gives them a significant advantage over some of the other wholesalers out there.
And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
That's the point of buying and consolidating, rolling up Innovative and Secure Tech and Apris into them. That's capitalism.
It's brilliant.
And one thing I'll say about Equifax, they have been very forthcoming and very transparent about their plan. And I believe, and I've said this before, I believe their plan is to continue to expand into retail. We're seeing TransUnion and a little more marketing for them about dipping their toe in the water. I know amongst the 400 CRAs that we track, there's always that fear. Is 2025 the year? Andy and Bianca chime in. Is that the year this comes to fruition, where the credit bureaus are significant competitors, or do you guys think we're still not there
We're
yet?
getting close, that's for sure. And from you put yourself in a strategic perspective of theirs, there's a lot of really, really good reasons to. One being the trained and scaled sales and marketing force that they have, which
Yep.
frankly is going to make the entire difference in this scenario. And you take the blueprint of what you've used successfully within other Equifax product lines, you copy and paste that into the retail space in background screening. It's as simple as that for them.
I agree.
Yeah, I think you also have a expectation of a much friendlier regulatory environment in which to operate. Some of the rulings that had been coming out about who's subject to FCRA, where in the provider chain, things like that. I think there's going to be less concern about that, and less concern about any kind of monopolistic or pushback for monopolistic practices potentially with the current administration. So I think that also makes the regulatory environment potentially a little bit easier for an Equifax to continue to expand more aggressively.
Let's and I one more thought on Equifax, because then I think it dovetails nicely to a conversation around talent, layoffs, professionals in the space that historically haven't been available. My last kind of thought on Equifax and specifically employment verifications is, I think as again the revenue can grow and they can hit their number, but there are, and we hear it all the time, there are people that are dropping it as a product. Employers and CRAs are dropping it as a product. Maybe they pivot to Truve and Argyle and some of the other alternate verification solutions, but many of them, they're just, their end users just don't want it anymore. There's not value at that price. I think we are going to see more litigation in the space that comes from not doing employment verifications. I think it's just
sure.
it's just a natural byproduct. It's a risk hole that will grow, and there will be more lawsuits because of it. And Jason, we see that with the work that we do all the time.
Absolutely.
So talent in our space, and then we'll wind up with a one hot take for each of us. Talent in the space. I can't remember the last time that we've seen this many people in the market that are looking for their next new opportunity. And it's ironic, Jason. We talk about this all the time from recruiting. Recruiting is kind of like a barbell. When things are kind of like nobody really needs recruiting solutions, but when there's no talent available, you got to go pluck somebody out of a business. And when there's so many people available, it's like, man, I got 20 resumes. I don't know. Help us make a decision. But man, there's a lot of great free agents out there today.
Yeah,
and there's going to be more of them in 2025.
Yeah, especially on the operations side. And this is the year to start watching cash flow and finding synergies within your own company. So, bringing on a seasoned operations person that's been there, done that can help you find those nickels in the river, will really do your company a lot of goodness over the next couple of years. So there's incredible talent on the operations side, compliance side, client-facing account managers, and definitely on the sales side.
Andy and Bianca, does the talent stay in the space, or do they go find another path professionally?
I think a lot of them will go find another path professionally. I think that the finiteness of, call it available opportunities in this space is going to continue to get finite. And it's true in other spaces. It really depends on kind of what your expertise is. If you are a product builder and you're sort of in like a product engineering technology space, you will not have a lack of opportunities. There is plenty of spaces for you to fit in. Sales and marketing, I think folks have to be very intentional around how they take and translate their skill set into the right stage company, into the company that's going to make a lot of sense for where they are in their growth. Some companies are really strategic with how they hire sales and marketing people. And, if you are somebody who's just kind of in the industry or you're looking for an opportunity and you're not getting any here, yeah, you do have translatable skills into other HR tech worlds. That being said, it works both ways. So for companies in the background screening space, I think possibly hot take. I just think people should do this. I think that there is a good reason to take a look at other, SaaS or tech talent that is out there, and bringing them into the fold into your background screening is a really good idea. It's a great idea. You see it happening at certainly some of the larger. I mean, it's been happening for years. This is not a new thing whatsoever. But yeah, it works both ways.
Andy, does that play in international opportunities? Are those growing faster? Are those shrinking faster than what we might see domestically?
I think it's a challenge on the international side because where some of the growth is, we're going to see some growth offshore. It's not always that easy to kind of relocate. It's one thing to be remote. It's another thing to be remote 8 time zones off of where the employer might be. So I think there's some challenges around workforce transferability when it comes to that. But I certainly think people that have international experience, that have some experience with it, are going to have an easier time finding a new home, right? Because your skill set's a little bit broader. You're going to bring more to the table. I do agree that people are going to move outside the industry. I've already seen that. I'm sure you guys know some of the same names that have kind of gone off and started some stuff somewhat adjacent, but not entirely, background screening, whether it's KYC or compliance type products, people getting into the AI arena, other data sets and stuff like that. So I think we're going to continue to see that. With consolidation, it's not always a net sum game, but sometimes it is. And it's going to be a little bit with the HR staffing, not to mention pressures we get from AI, and other things like that that are also going to drive down overall workforces.
Yeah. All right. All right. Hot take time. Jason, what do you got? And I
I
like
don't
putting
know.
us on the spot like this, right?
Hot take on what? What do you want a hot take on?
Just closing thoughts as we wrap up. We're wrapping up.
My closing thoughts would be something I've ended lots of webinars with, and it's not my quote, but this year it'll be more important than ever. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Cash is king.
Amen.
Bianca, you got another hot take,
Well,
or you hot take out?
I got all the hot. I could sit here all day and do hot takes. Let me tell you. No, I think on that note, listen, like there's so much positioning. Like, get your act together, I guess is what I want to say. Get your act together in terms of the way you're presenting yourself in the world. Starting with y'all's websites. Let's improve things there. And even, I'm not going to lie, I got some hot takes at even some of the, let's call it larger ones. There is too much copy on your hero section and your homepage. I know we have a lot of products to sell and we need a lot to talk about. We have compliance, blah, blah, blah. The best websites, I'm going to give you some free advice here, is what we talked about earlier. We want to know that we can walk into your experience and it's going to be easy and nice and the things that we expect in other parts of our lives. The best websites represent that to the buyers really quickly. So that's my hot take and also my free advice. You're welcome.
Love it. Love it. All right, Andy, your turn.
Well, I would probably borrow Bianca's phrase about it potentially being a little terrifying this year.
Terrifying.
Terrifying. But yeah, I think it's really there's going to be a lot of noise this year, whether it's because of additional M&A activity, stuff going on. It's going to be easy to get distracted for companies. It's going to be easy to be following whatever the latest news or threat or whatever might be happening. I think it's really keep your head down, figure out what your path is, and stick to it. Don't get distracted by all the noise. Don't get distracted by the other stuff going on because then you're just never going to get anything done this year.
Yeah.
There's going to be opportunity, but you're going to have to stay focused to take advantage of it.
One thing that strikes me, and I will wax a bit before I get into my hot take. One thing that strikes me is recessions happen on average every 6 to 7 years. We have had one recession since 2008. Eventually, we're going to have another. Is it this year, next year? I don't know. But I have long said, from a technology standpoint, I don't know why there's 25,000 people working in the industry, and I don't see that number growing over time. The second thing I think of is I don't know why there's 400 background screening companies. All individual owners, founders, etc. I am not disparaging your businesses, your life goals, etc. I think it is awesome, but there are not 400 payroll companies out there. There are not 400 ATS companies out there. Why are there 400 background screening companies? So I think we're moving away from the world of I'm law enforcement, I'm criminal justice, I'm a former police officer, I'm going to start a background check company, and more of the money, the talent, the ambition, the product, the technology is going to go towards organizations that see this as a professional business. So my hot take is I think we're going to see 10 to 15 companies at the smaller end of the spectrum just close their doors because the revenue is drying up and they're not appealing enough to buy. And I think we're going to see another 15 or so companies at the low end of the spectrum pair up, sell, find a partner, go it together, etc., rather than just continue to operate their $2 million companies by themselves. So I think at the bottom end of the market, 2025 is going to be a very transformative year. And whether or not there's a recession in the near future will either kick that up or kick that lower proportionally. Bianca, why don't you take us out and let our audience know what's up with iCubed Advisors over the next few weeks and months?
Sure, I will say I'm pretty sure we found our clickbaity title for the podcast here: "Terrifying Predictions of 2025." So clickbait coming to you soon. What else is coming to you soon is on February 20th, we are doing, like we mentioned at the top of the podcast, Product Spotlight webinar with Griffin HR, diving into all things I-9 and this new administration and how getting some automation things together is a great idea for you and a great opportunity. So look out for that. Also, my new sales and marketing course, Revenue Growth Essentials, is available for you. Get in contact. We're pretty excited. We've had some good VIP group discussions and people coming on board. So I'm really excited to help some of these kind of, like Kevin mentioned, these mid and smaller CRAs. What can you do to stay in the game? What can you do to compete? And you heard my advice here where I'm going to help you get your act together. So,
yep, we have our executive leadership series kicking off shortly. And I'm spearheading that, owners and leaders, founders of organizations, closed, very open, very transparent, just amongst us, business challenges, business successes, solutions. How do we learn from each other? A company in Montana can help your company in Missouri. You are not threats to each other. Let's share thoughts and solutions. And we got a nice PBSA panel. We're doing a holistic view on the industry, sharing some of the data and insights that we've tracked over the last couple of years.
We actually have something.
I know that's what's coming up over the last couple of months.
Absolutely, we have something extremely exciting coming up for mid-year and actually annual PBSA even this year. We have big plans, guys, and so I'm going to tease it now. We can't, we're not at liberty to come out with details quite yet, but we will say that mid-year is going to be really cool. We're doing some cool stuff and bringing some cool ideas.
Live from.
Let's just tease that out. Anyway, also, I just want to say, we talked a lot about jobs. As ever, iCubed Advisors does recruiting in our industry. You guys, we're here for you to help you figure out what is the next role that you want to hire for at your company. That's a very strategic decision. So we're always open to that conversation. And likewise, any of you folks that are out there job hunting, it's a rough game out there. And so let us know, drop your resume, on our website and let us know how we can help. Boys, Anything else you guys want to mention while we're here? Welcome, Andy. He's gone viral, so love to see it. We have a brand new blog telling a little bit more about Andy and what his work is. And he has a ginormous headshot on there because it is my fault. I cannot resize it for the life of me. But you will get an up close and personal view of Andy Hellman with iCube Advisors now. So
count the nose hairs. It's like the jelly beans. How many jelly beans are in the jar? Count the nose hairs on the headshot.
I'm trying to make a statement on the size of my ego or anything like that. So.
Well, hey, all the better. You know, who needs to be humble? Nobody. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. As ever, appreciate your time and listening and joining to iCube Advisors. We'll see you next time. Bye now.